What if the war didn't end when they told you it did? What if, hours after peace was declared, American pilots were still fighting and dying in the skies over Japan? Pause. This is the incredible story of the last plane flying on the final mission of World War II, a mission that would not only claim the last casualty of the conflict, but would inadvertently help stop a violent coup and ensure the Emperor's surrender broadcast was heard around the world. This is the story of Captain Jerry Yellin in the forgotten battle that finally brought the war to a close. By mid-August 1945, Japan was a shattered empire. The cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki had been vaporized by atomic fire, and the Soviet Union had declared war, sweeping into Manchuria. But for the pilots of the 78th Fighter Squadron, stationed on the black volcanic hellscape of Iwo Jima, the war was far from over. For Captain Jerry Yellin, a 21-year-old P-51 Mustang pilot from New Jersey, this was the brutal reality. Iwo Jima was a grim outpost. As Yellin himself later recalled, there wasn't a blade of grass, and there were 28,000 bodies rotting in the sun. The stench of death was permanent. On the morning of August 14, 1945, east of the international date line, Yellin and his wingman, 19-year-old Second Lieutenant Philip Schlamberg, were tasked with a long-range mission to strafe Japanese airfields near Tokyo. Their target was Irumagawa, a key base protecting the capital. It was a dangerous mission, flown at wave-top height to avoid radar, and the tension was unbearable. As they climbed into their P-51 Mustangs, Schlamberg, a young man with a premonition of doom, looked at Yellin and confessed he had a terrible feeling he wouldn't make it back. Yellin tried to reassure him, but the weight of those words hung heavy in the cockpit. Little did they know, as their flight of 4 P-51s, named Pissin' Mule, Pissin' Punk, Lil Ditto and Pissin' Filth, roared off the runway, that they were flying straight into history. For 3 long hours, the 4 Mustangs droned northward over the cold, gray Pacific. Inside the cockpit, it was a world of isolation. The drone of the Packard FIFU 1650 engine, the vibration through the stick, the endless expanse of water, was unbeknownst to Yellin and his men. At that very moment, half a world away in Tokyo, history was being made. Emperor Hirohito had recorded his surrender message, the Jewel Voice broadcast, which was set to air at noon the next day. By 1400 hours, Yellin's flight was over the target, skimming just 50 feet above the airfield. The flak was intense. Tracer fire reached up for them, filling the air with black smoke and hot steel. They pressed the attack, strafing aircraft and installations. In the chaos of the run, they were jumped by Japanese fighters. Yellin spotted a Nakajima Ki 43 Oscar and immediately engaged, his 50 caliber guns tearing into the enemy plane. The dogfight was furious and desperate, the last aerial combat of World War II, playing out miles above a city on the brink of revolution. And then in an instant it happened. The flight turned for the coast, racing for the open sea. They flew into a cloud bank near the east coast of Honshu. Yellin emerged from the clouds, scanning the sky for his wingman. Lil Ditto, flown by young Philip Schlamberg, was gone. Pause. He had vanished into the clouds and never came out. Whether he was hit by flak or a Japanese fighter in those final frantic seconds, no one knows. He was just 19 years old. The last American to die in aerial combat in World War II had been killed, even as the diplomats in Washington and Tokyo were putting pen to paper. The 4 planes that took off from Iwo Jima were now 3. The crisis was absolute. They were low on fuel, deep in enemy territory, and the war was still on. With heavy hearts and a desperate need to get home, Yellin led the remaining planes back over the Pacific. It was a long, agonizing flight. But when they finally touched down on Iwo Jima, they knew something was wrong. The island was eerily quiet. There were no frantic preparations for the next strike. As Yellin climbed from his cockpit, his crew chief ran up to him. The news was almost too much to process. The war had been over for 3 hours, while they were fighting for their lives over Tokyo. The cost of that final mission was immense. Philip Schlamberg is officially recognized as the last American airman killed in World War II. For Yellin, the weight of survival was a burden he would carry for decades. He was haunted by the faces of his friends, the stench of Iwo Jima, and the guilt of coming home. For 30 years, he suffered from undiagnosed post-traumatic stress disorder, struggling with rage, depression, and thoughts of suicide. It was only through the love of his family and the practice of transcendental meditation that he finally found peace. He later became a passionate advocate for veterans' mental health, co-founding Operation Warrior Wellness. For his service, he was awarded the Distinguished Flying Cross. The last mission, born of tragedy and fog of war, was a microcosm of the entire conflict, brutal, confusing, and costly. But in its own strange way, by causing that final blackout, it helped ensure that the peace would finally come.